You're being watched right this very moment. And no, this isn't conspiracy theory or paranoia. There's something around you that most people spend their entire lives without consciously noticing. Something that's trying to communicate with you through signs you've probably been ignoring or dismissing as coincidence. The truth nobody tells you is that your spiritual guides aren't distant figures floating in some inaccessible dimension. They're here, now. So close that if you knew exactly where and how to look, you'd be shocked at how many times they've already intervened in your life without you realizing it. That accident you avoided by seconds, that toxic person you felt inexplicable discomfort meeting, that moment when you woke up without an alarm exactly at the time you needed to. None of that was luck. And in the next few minutes, you're going to discover not just how to identify when your spiritual guides are trying to talk to you, but also how to open this communication channel in a way that you'll never feel alone or lost again, no matter the size of the challenge you're facing. If you're watching this video now, it's not by chance. It's one of the signs from spiritual guides directing you to information you need to hear at this specific moment in your life. So if you really want to understand how this invisible spiritual protection that's been with you since you were born works, subscribe to the channel now. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any content about spirituality and spiritual awakening. Drop that like so more people can discover these truths. And stick around until the end, because I'm going to reveal the exact phrase you can use tonight to establish direct contact with your guides. Share this video with someone you feel needs to hear this, because sometimes we're the instrument that spiritual guides use to carry spiritual messages to other people. Ready? Then let's go. Because what you're about to discover will completely change the way you see everything that happens in your life. There's something happening around people right this very moment that most simply don't notice. While many live on autopilot, rushing from one place to another, their spiritual guides are practically shouting, sending signals, tapping their invisible shoulders, trying to capture their attention in every possible way. These signs aren't random coincidences or products of an overactive imagination from someone seeking spirituality. They're real messages, intentional and loaded with spiritual protection that arrive exactly when we need them most. The problem is that modern life has taught us to ignore these whispers from the unseen, to dismiss as nonsense what we can't touch or measure with a ruler. But what if there was a simple way to recognize when your spiritual guide is trying to make contact right now, as you're reading these very words? The first sign is perhaps the most common and at the same time the most ignored, those unexplainable chills that come out of nowhere. It's not cold. It's not fear. There's no logical explanation, but suddenly your skin prickles as if someone had run an invisible feather down your arm. When this happens, especially during moments of important decisions or when you're thinking about someone specific, your spiritual guides are confirming something, validating a thought, warning you about a path. It's as if the universe had its own notification system, and the chills were the vibrations of the spiritual phone we carry inside us. But here's the detail few people notice. These chills have perfect timing. They're never random. They always arrive in sync with something you were questioning or needed to understand. And there are more signs happening simultaneously that most people don't even imagine. There's a true story that perfectly illustrates what happens when we ignore the signs from spiritual guides, and it'll make you rethink every intuition you've ever dismissed in your life. A woman woke up 3 times in the same night with an overwhelming feeling that she shouldn't hit the road the next day, a sensation so strong that she broke into a cold sweat in bed. She had an important meeting scheduled, something she'd been planning for months, so she completely ignored that inexplicable discomfort and took the trip in the morning. On the way, a serious accident closed the highway exactly at the time she would be passing through, and by a matter of minutes she found herself trapped in the middle of chaos, seeing up close what could have happened if she'd left 5 minutes earlier. That was the day she understood that ignoring warnings from spiritual guides isn't just missing a spiritual message. It's like turning off the alarm system of your own life. But the story doesn't end there, because there's another side to this coin that few people know about. A man felt a strange discomfort every time he thought about accepting a partnership proposal in an apparently perfect business, something that on paper seemed like the opportunity of his lifetime. Every time he was about to sign the contract, he felt a tightness in his chest, a voice whispering that something wasn't right, even though everyone around him said he was crazy for hesitating. This time he listened, turned down the proposal even without understanding why. And 6 months later, he discovered that business was an elaborate fraud that led all the partners to bankruptcy and endless legal proceedings. The difference between these two stories isn't about luck. It's about the ability to recognize when spiritual guides are activating the spiritual protection system around us. What if you could measure exactly how many guides are actively working in your life right now? Most people have no idea how many spiritual guides walk beside them at this very moment, and the answer might surprise even the biggest skeptics. There's a simple method anyone can use to identify not just whether they have spiritual guides, but how many are actively working in their life right now. Think about the moments when you felt something greater protected you. Those situations where you escaped by a hair from something bad, or when you made a seemingly random decision that changed everything for the better. If this happened once or twice in your life, you probably have one main protective guide, the one who's always present like a personal guardian angel. But if these experiences repeat constantly, if you frequently feel strong intuitions or go through synchronicities impossible to explain, then you have an entire team of spiritual guides working behind the scenes of your existence. Here's what really differentiates someone who has 3, 5, or even more active spiritual guides: the variety of life areas where you receive protection and guidance. If you notice signs from spiritual guides only in moments of physical danger, you probably have between 1 and 2 guides focused on basic protection. But if you also receive creative insights out of nowhere, solutions to problems that come up in vivid dreams, unlikely encounters with the right people at the right time, and on top of that feel a deep connection with spirituality and spiritual awakening, then you're operating with a team of 5 or more specialized guides. Each one has a specific function: one for physical protection, another for emotional healing, a third for guidance in important decisions, and so on. But there's a specific set of numbers that appear in your life when your guides want to call your attention in an even more direct way, and their meaning goes far beyond what you've already heard. If you look at the clock and constantly catch 11:11, 12:12, or 21:21, this isn't coincidence, and the real explanation goes far beyond those generic interpretations floating around out there. When spiritual guides want to establish direct communication, they use repeating numbers because our conscious mind can't easily ignore them. They create a pattern that forces our attention. The 11:11 specifically is the entry portal, the sign that your guides are saying you're in a moment of spiritual alignment, that the doors between the visible and invisible are more open to you now. It's not a simple make a wish like people say. It's a warning that you're in a phase where your spiritual intuitions are sharper, where spiritual messages flow more easily. Every time you see 11:11, your guides are basically saying, "We're here. We're paying attention, and this is the moment for you to pay attention too." Now, 12:12 has a completely different function that almost nobody mentions. It's the number of practical action and balance between the spiritual and material. When you see 12:12 repeatedly, your spiritual guides are signaling that it's time to take something from the realm of ideas and bring it into concrete reality, that you have the necessary support to take the next step. As for 21:21, it's even more specific. It's the number that appears when you're about to close an important cycle and start another, an indication that significant changes are coming and you need to trust the process. What's fascinating is that these number sequences don't appear alone. They come accompanied by other signs from spiritual guides that most people don't connect. And speaking of connected signs, there's something your guides have already done for you that literally saved your life, but you probably attributed it to luck or chance. There's a moment in every person's life when something unexplainable happened and completely changed the course of events, but in the daily rush it was filed away as luck or coincidence. That sudden impulse to change your route on the way to work, even without any logical reason, and later discovering there was a serious accident on the street you always take. That strange discomfort you felt meeting someone who seemed perfect on paper, a visceral sensation that made you pull back, and months later finding out that person had a problematic history you wouldn't have been able to see right away. These aren't your personal instincts working alone. It's the spiritual protection from your spiritual guides operating in real time, creating invisible detours that move you away from dangers you wouldn't even be able to perceive consciously. The problem is that the rational mind tries to explain everything with logic, so we attribute these interventions to chance, when in fact they're urgent spiritual messages being delivered. One of the most common examples that goes completely unnoticed is when you wake up at the exact moment, without an alarm, precisely at the time you needed to wake up for something important. It seems trivial, but think about it. Your body was in deep sleep. There was no alarm set, and suddenly you just open your eyes at the right minute. This isn't pure biology. It's direct intervention from your spiritual guides, adjusting your internal clock to ensure you don't miss that interview, that trip, that crucial moment. Or when you're about to make a terrible decision and out of nowhere someone calls, or you find a specific article, or something happens that makes you pause and reconsider. Your spiritual guides are constantly orchestrating synchronicities around you, using people, situations, and even nature to guide you. And speaking of nature, there's a specific way your guides use natural elements to communicate, especially when you're thinking about someone who has passed. When someone we love leaves this world, one of the most tormenting questions is whether there's still some form of connection, some sign that they're still around somehow. The answer is yes, and your spiritual guides frequently work as intermediaries, using elements of nature to deliver messages from loved ones who've crossed the veil. That butterfly that lands on your shoulder precisely on the birthday of someone special who's gone, or the white feather you find on the path exactly when you're thinking about that person with longing. It's not poetic. It's not your mind creating meanings where none exist. It's a real system of spiritual communication that works through spiritual guides as translators between dimensions. Nature vibrates at a frequency that's closer to the spiritual plane than any human technology could be, which is why it's the preferred medium for these messages to reach you. Birds have an even more specific role in this communication because they're beings that transit between sky and earth, literally living bridges between the physical and spiritual world. When you're going through a difficult moment, thinking about someone who's already passed, and suddenly a bird sings at your window or crosses your path in an unusual way, your spiritual guides are using that animal as a messenger. It's as if they adjusted that bird's GPS specifically to cross paths with you at that exact moment, creating a synchronicity impossible to be just chance. The same thing happens with butterflies that appear in places or times of year where they should be rare, or with feathers that show up in closed spaces where they shouldn't exist. Each of these signs carries a message that you're not alone, that there's active spiritual protection in your life, and that love transcends any physical boundary. But pay attention, because there are specific behaviors that can completely block this communication with your guides, and most people do this without even realizing it. There's a dangerous belief that spiritual guides never abandon us, that they're always there no matter what we do. And technically that's true, but there's a huge difference between being present and being active. When someone lives in a state of constant extreme negativity, complaining about absolutely everything, blaming the world for every problem, immersed in a vibration so heavy that even the people around them feel the weight, that person creates an energetic barrier that blocks communication with spiritual guides. It's not that they leave. It's that the vibrational frequency becomes so dense that spiritual messages simply can't penetrate. It's like trying to tune into an FM radio in the middle of a storm of interference. The guides keep sending signs from spiritual guides, but they bounce off the wall of pessimism that's been built, and the person ends up living disconnected from all that spiritual protection that's available. Another devastating blocker is living completely on autopilot, repeating the same patterns day after day, without ever stopping to question, feel, or observe. When someone becomes so mechanical in life that they no longer register those moments of pause, those seconds of silence where spiritual intuition could speak, that person closes all the entry doors for the guides. It's like having someone knocking on your house door nonstop, but you're wearing loud headphones that don't let you hear absolutely anything. Extreme distrust and aggressive skepticism also create walls, because if you've already decided beforehand that none of this exists, that all synchronicity is coincidence, and that spirituality is nonsense, you literally program your mind to ignore every attempt at contact. Spiritual guides respect free will above all else, so if you consciously close the door, they won't break it down. But there's a specific phrase, a way of asking for help that opens this channel instantly, no matter how long you've been disconnected. The moment between being awake and falling asleep is the most powerful portal to establish direct communication with your spiritual guides. And most people waste this sacred window, scrolling through endless feeds on their phones. When you're in that drowsy state, where the conscious mind starts to shut down, but you still maintain a thin line of consciousness, the barriers between the physical and spiritual world become almost transparent. It's at this moment that your spiritual guides can plant spiritual messages directly in your subconscious, which will manifest in vivid dreams loaded with symbolism and guidance. The method is simple, but it needs to be done with genuine intention. Lie down comfortably, turn off all distractions, close your eyes, and take 3 deep breaths, allowing each exhale to carry away the worries of the day. Then, with a calm mind, make a clear and specific request to your spiritual guide. It can be a question about something bothering you, a decision you need to make, or simply a request for them to manifest in a way you can recognize. The secret that transforms this ritual from common to extraordinarily effective is keeping a notebook beside the bed to write down everything you remember as soon as you wake up, because messages from spiritual guides in dreams start to evaporate from conscious memory within minutes. It doesn't need to be an elaborate journal. Just scribble down the images, sensations, or words that stuck, because often the complete meaning will only make sense days or weeks later when you revisit those notes. Many people do this process once and give up because they don't receive an immediate cinematic response. But spiritual communication works in layers. Sometimes the answer comes in subtle details you only notice when you connect the dots. Pay special attention to synchronicities that start happening the next day, to conversations that come out of nowhere addressing exactly the theme you asked about, to signs from spiritual guides through numbers, animals, or unusual situations. And there's more. Everyone has specific types of guides working in different areas of life, and you probably don't even know which one is most active right now. The spiritual structure that accompanies every human being is much more organized and specific than people imagine, and understanding this completely changes how you relate to your spiritual guides. The first type that absolutely everyone has is the protective guide, the one who's with you from birth until your last breath, functioning as a personal guardian angel whose sole mission is to guarantee your physical and energetic safety. This is the guide that wakes you up seconds before the alarm goes off, when you need to wake up early. That makes you feel that warning chill when you're about to enter a dangerous situation. That diverts your attention in traffic exactly when you need to brake. If you've ever felt that visceral sensation of "don't go that way," without any logical reason, or if you've had a sudden impulse to do something different that saved you from a problem, that's your protective guide working in real time. Their presence manifests through strong and immediate spiritual intuitions, especially in moments of imminent risk. The second type is the healing guide, and not everyone recognizes their presence because their work is more subtle and focused on the emotional and spiritual. This guide springs into action in moments of deep pain, when you're going through losses, disappointments, or emotional wounds that seem impossible to overcome. They work through synchronicities that bring the right people to you at the exact moment, that friend who calls out of nowhere precisely when you most needed to talk, that book that falls off the shelf at the bookstore and speaks exactly about what you're living through, that song that plays on the radio and seems to have been written for your moment. The healing guide also uses nature as a tool, which is why many people feel an inexplicable peace being near water, trees, or watching the sky, because they're channeling healing energy through these elements. But there's a third type of guide that's even more fascinating, and that very few people can identify consciously. There's a moment in life when you need immediate help, when the situation is getting out of control, and you feel you need urgent intervention from something greater than yourself. It could be a decision that needs to be made in seconds, a danger you sense approaching, or simply a moment of desperation where you don't know where to go anymore. It's precisely in these moments that most people freeze, because they don't know how to ask their spiritual guides for help in an effective and direct way. The truth is, you don't need elaborate rituals, lit candles, or special preparations when you're in a real emergency. Your spiritual guides are constantly tuned into your frequency, just waiting for you to consciously open the channel and ask with genuine intention. The phrase is simple, but it needs to be said with an open heart and with the real willingness to receive and follow whatever guidance comes. Because asking for help and then ignoring the signs from spiritual guides is like calling an ambulance and locking the door when it arrives. The phrase is, "Guides of light who accompany me, I need your help now. Show me the way with clarity." It seems too simple to be powerful, but the strength is in the intention behind the words, not in the words themselves. When you say this with genuine sincerity, you're literally lighting a flare on the spiritual plane that your guides cannot ignore. What happens next can manifest in various ways. A sudden and crystal clear spiritual intuition about what to do. A person who appears out of nowhere offering exactly the solution you needed. An unexpected change in the situation that opens a path that didn't exist before. Or even a physical sensation of peace that guides you to the right decision. The key is to remain attentive in the following hours, because the answer will come, but not always in the way you expected. Spiritual guides work through synchronicities, through subtle spiritual messages, through doors that open and others that close, always respecting your free will but clearly showing which is the path of greatest spiritual protection and alignment with your higher purpose. Now that you've made it this far and discovered all these truths about the spiritual guides who walk beside you, the question that remains is, what are you going to do with this information from now on? Because knowledge without application is like having a treasure map and leaving it stored in a drawer without ever following the coordinates. You've learned to recognize the signs from spiritual guides, understood how they use repeating numbers, elements of nature, and synchronicities to communicate, discovered the phrase that opens the direct channel in emergencies, and now you have in your hands the practical tools to never feel disconnected from this spiritual protection that's always been available. But here's the final secret that few realize. The more you recognize and give thanks for the signs you receive, the clearer and more frequent they become. It's like strengthening a muscle that was dormant. Start tonight, before sleeping, making that conscious request to your guides. Keep the notebook beside your bed, and in the coming days pay double attention to everything that seems to coincide perfectly with what you were thinking or needing. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these signs have you already experienced without realizing it was communication from your spiritual guides? Was it the repeating numbers like 1111? Was it the unexplainable chills? The vivid dreams that seemed like messages? Or that sudden impulse that saved you from something bad? Leave it here in the comments, because your experience might be exactly the sign another person needs to see to awaken to this reality. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now and hit that notification bell, because every week there's new content about spirituality, spiritual intuition, and spiritual awakening that will help you on this journey. Drop that like if this video brought clarity to you, and share it with someone you feel needs to hear these truths, because sometimes we're the messengers that spiritual guides use to reach other people. And remember, you were never alone. You'll never be alone, because there are forces of light working tirelessly by your side, just waiting for you to open your eyes to see and your heart to receive. Until the next video, and may your guides illuminate every step of your path.